guys, welcome back to the channel. Got a beautiful day, so I decided to roll the bikes out, kind of set up here in the driveway, and answer a question a ton of you have been commenting on the videos and my Instagram and all that stuff. So thought I'd sit down and make a video about it finally, kind of give you guys some closure or give you guys an answer, whatever you want to call it, about my V2 Bayliss and where that bike went. So long story short, Doug, the V2 Bayliss, is no longer with us. I ended up selling that motorcycle when I bought the R, and a lot of reasons for it. This journey of what am I going to do with the V2 Bayliss kind of started back when I bought my base V4 here. I bought the base V4 as an experiment and was like, I'm probably going to end up doing something like keeping the Bayliss with the R and having a cool V2 and the coolest V4 basically. And then the more I rode the V4, well, almost actually like immediately after I rode the V4, even in its just, base wheels with just the exhaust, I was like, yo, this is a game changer right here. So a lot of reasons why. Let's start going over them. So if you guys watch the channel, or if you've been, subscribers, previous viewers, whatever, you'll know all I do is track ride these motorcycles. I do not street ride. Funny enough, I don't even have a motorcycle license. So, track life is the only life for me on these bikes. That's all that matters. The Bayliss, really the V2 in Panigale form, Street Fighter form, I'm sure it's a phenomenal street bike, but the engine is a great street bike motor. Still basically a racing engine, but the V2 Bayliss it's not a great street bike, and it's really not a great track bike either. So when you stack it up against a bike like this, so a lot of the main reasons, I guess I'll try and make this quick. Let's start with the engine, right? When you're on the Bayliss and you're on track in race mode and you got everything dialed up, doesn't really matter how you have the bike set up, that bike gives you all the power from like 7 to 10,000 RPM. And sometimes it's a little herky-jerky. To be honest, that engine is really just a carry-on from the 899, which was then became the 959, which is now the 955 in the V2. It's an old motor that they've kind of continuously refined, and not that it's not a good motor, but it is an old motor, and you can tell, and it's got a lot of punch. So going in the tight twisties, it honestly, it's harder to ride because it has almost the same torque as this bike does, and you kind of get like all of it. It'll unsettle the bike, so it makes the chassis upset. No matter how I set the suspension up, the chassis just got disrupted by the narrow power band on that bike. You get on the V4, and that thing is just smooth as glass, nice linear line. The torque curve is very shallow and mellow. You get a lot of power, don't get me wrong. You got boatloads of power on this bike. But the way it makes the power, even though it makes way more, and on paper, the Bayliss had 160 with the exhaust, this has 228. Oh my God, this feels like it has 300 horsepower compared to a V2. It's ridiculous. There's no comparison in power. On overall power, this thing pulls like you're going into into light speed mode. I mean, it's ridiculous. The torque is crazy still in the V2s, don't get me wrong, but the power is so much easier to ride. Even though you've got a lot, it's so much easier to ride and just predictable and smooth and comfortable. And on the racetrack, it's less fatiguing. Even though you got more power, you're going faster, it's less fatiguing because you're not fighting the bike, you're not fighting your upset chassis nearly as much. So power is a big deal, even turn down, turn up, whatever. Power and engine characteristics are just night and day better on the V4. It's way more refined. So, and my buddy KDP Cycles, he can attest to that as well. He rode my Bayliss, he rode our friend's Street Fighter V2, and he's got a Street Fighter V4 SP2, and he's like, dude, it's night and day. It's ridiculous. So he can attest to it too as well. Go check out his channel. He's doing some cool stuff with his bike. But anyway, let's go on from the engine. If this bike had the same power as the V2, wouldn't matter. I'd pick this motor every day. Going on from that, ergos and aerodynamics, because they're all kind of one thing. Guys, I struggled, or I guess I was unaware of how much I was struggling on the V2 because of how kind of uncomfortable that bike is. The tank shape for me just sucked. It did not work at all. Had a really hard time holding on to that tank when I'm off the side of the bike. That was a big deal. There's really no bubble on the V2, to be honest. So a lot of wind blast. It's kind of fatiguing because of the wind blast, because it is such a skinny motorcycle. This thing's a big old, thick old thing. Lots of width on the fairings to tuck behind. So the bubble on this bike, I could go out and ride this bike on a 35, 40 degree day, and the only thing that's going to get cold is my hands because of how good the bubble is on the V4 compared to the V2. It's amazing. Just amazing. The way you could tuck into that motorcycle. And the ergonomics of the V4 over the V2 as well are just phenomenal. Between the tank shape and the body position, when you lay into the V4 and you tuck in tight, you feel like you're just laying on a couch. It's so natural and so comfortable. Now, I got rear sets. I'm still waiting on the rear sets I ordered for these bikes. So I'm sure that will help even more. I could do, clip-ons and all that stuff. But even as the bike sits with the stock rear sets, stock bar position and everything, at least for me, take that for what it's worth. I'm 5'9" and change. And, I'm about 160 pounds, 165 pounds. So kind of skinnier. I lay into this bike so nice. And it makes riding the bike so much easier. The tank is designed for you to throw your body off the side of this motorcycle. So hooking into the bike when you're on the side of off the side of the bike, it's like, you can't even compare it. When I had the Bayliss and I was tracking that motorcycle, I didn't track it a lot at the end. I really only tracked it the last little bit of the time I owned it. And, man, my hips, my lower back, my arms, I was always like riding the bike with my upper body, which is not what you want to do, but my lower body got so fatigued from riding that motorcycle because I was fighting so hard to get comfortable. And then I got on the V4 and I'm like, dude, I could ride this thing for, we do 20-minute sessions at track days, 7 20-minute sessions. I could go out and ride this thing for 40, 45 minutes out of the hour and be comfortable and not get fatigued. The only thing that does fatigue you is, because of how fast this bike is and how stonking the brakes are, your neck does get tired from the braking, but that over time you'll build that up, but it'll still fatigue you. But for the most part, in every shape of the, just doesn't matter, and every imaginable way, the V4 is such a comfortable bike if you're tracking or street riding. I mean, this is the worst. These two bikes are the worst street bikes in the whole wide world because they're useless. You can't even get out of first gear without going to jail speed. So, they're basically dumb. You do a second, third gear pull, and you're basically time warped to the next county that you live near. So, basically, in my eyes, they're only track bikes. So, as a track bike, whatever, people still street ride them. As a track bike, these things are phenomenal. They're so comfortable and enjoyable to ride. And kind of going off of ergonomics, it's not necessarily maybe a ergonomics thing, but the dash layout on this bike, on both of these, because the dash is the same, man, the shift lights, the gear indicator, the tack, the way that they position it, the size of it, the lights, where they put everything, the shift lights, it's like, it's not even a comparison. You really have to take a second on the V2 to look down and look into the hole that they put that dash in. It's a very small dash on the V2, so you really got to look. The lights are really small, the shift lights and all that. This, it's perfectly, if you're tucked in really good, those lights are right in your, like bottom half of your peripheral. You can't not see them. All it takes is a quick, just split second glance down to see if you need to check a gear, what gear you are in. So that just makes it so much easier too. You know when you're going to shift because you can't possibly miss it. And just the whole dash layout is just way better. And I guess talking about gearing too, I didn't really talk about gears when I was talking about the engine, but I guess we could talk about it as a separate thing. The gearing on these bikes, the tall gearing, as well as how the shifter works, is another thing that's leaps and bounds ahead of the Bayliss. You know, first gear I think on these bikes ends at like a 95-ish, and just the way that you don't ever have to think about, oh, I could be this gear here, that gear there, or maybe I could go up or, you know, it's just such a given, and you're not shifting constantly. I pretty much live in second, third, and fourth. There's a couple tight sections I'm in first, but you know, if I'm doing 70 miles an hour in a slow section or something like that, second gear is great. You know, you got plenty of torque to pull out of it. First gear is a little, like it's got a little bit too much almost. So just the gearing and the way the shifter works is so, the action is so short, and the short shifter works way better than the Bayliss. That V2 engine, I'm not gonna lie, the transmission is really clunky. It doesn't work. The quick shifter gave me a lot of problems over the course of owning that bike. A lot of false neutrals. I had 2 false neutrals on this bike, but I blame myself because I think I just pulled the shifter halfway. I really think, I was getting tired after a long weekend. I blame that on myself. The whole time I've ridden this bike, the transmission has been fantastic. So those are really the big things. You know, once you get accustomed to riding a V4, or you even just try it out for a couple sessions, you realize that the V2 is not a good track bike. It's not conducive to putting in fast lap times. It's fun, it sounds cool, you know, but honestly, it's more challenging to ride because of the ergos, because of the dash, because of the transmission, the way the bike makes power. It becomes more of a problem to ride that bike. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I would rather keep the R in the base model project bike and get rid of the Bayliss, because I know that, you know, I love looking at that bike. I love the memories I made on that bike. You know, I would have never met my friend Kyle without that bike. Probably would have never met my girlfriend Courtney without that bike. That's a very special motorcycle to me, but at the end of the day, what I'm gonna do is drain the fluids out of it and hang it up in the garage or whatever, you know, put it on the ceiling as a cool ornament. And, you know, a $30,000 ornament is a very expensive piece of artwork that doesn't need to take up space, unfortunately. So that's why I got rid of it, guys. It's just not the best track bike. And it's also not a great street bike. If I got a Street Fighter V2, maybe it'd be different, but it's, you know, it's an uncomfortable motorcycle for me, you know. And yeah, that's it. So that's where the Bayliss went. The Bayliss went bye-bye. I do not have it anymore. I'm going to be rocking the R in the base model. We're going to build these 2 bikes. And yeah, I think that's about it. Let me check my list to make sure I hit everything. Sure looks like it. So that's it, guys. I appreciate you watching. That's the answer on the where the Bayliss went and why I got rid of it. So if you guys have any questions about V4, V2 stuff, let me know. I got lots of miles on both. I got quite a few track days on both now too. So hopefully I can kind of answer some questions that you might need answered or whatever. So that's it, guys. Let me know. Thanks for watching. See ya.